At 11:47 p.m. on Tuesday, October 12th, 2021, a tan Ford F550 flatbed with no license plate pulled into the gravel drive of the Braddock Farm, half a mile north of Gibson City, Illinois, on County Road 1300 North. Two men in dark coveralls cut the $46 master padlock on the machine shed door with a battery-powered angle grinder. They lifted the tan canvas cover off 1978 John Deere 4440, folded it in thirds, and set it on the workbench against the back wall. They drove the tractor onto the flatbed, strapped it down with four 4-inch ratchet straps, and pulled out of the drive at 12:16 a.m. Wednesday morning. Earl and Ruth Braddock were asleep 140 yards away in the farmhouse. Neither of them heard a thing. Walter Braddock had paid $32,500 for the 4440 in October of 1978, financed through Farmer State Bank at 9.25% over 7 years. He restored it in 2014, at age 81, for another $8,400 in parts and Virgil Kemp's labor. At the time of the theft, the tractor was insured through Deere Insurance Agency in Gibson City for a scheduled value of $48,000. Virgil said later that the thieves could not have picked a tractor that mattered more. If this kind of story matters to you, the kind where the numbers tell the truth and the work speaks for itself, we'd be honored if you subscribed. Earl walked out to the machine shed at 6:15 Wednesday morning to start the coffee pot on the shop bench. The padlock lay on the gravel with the hasp sheared clean off. The shed door hung open. The canvas cover was folded on the workbench. The concrete where the 4440 had stood for 3 seasons held only oil stains and a faint hexagonal pattern of dried rubber from the front tires. Earl stood in the doorway for a full minute without moving. Then he walked back to the house and told Ruth, flat and quiet, they took the 4440. If you're still here, subscribe. We don't rush these stories because the people in them didn't rush the work. Ruth called the Ford County Sheriff's Office at 6:23 a.m. Deputy Sheriff Tom Garver arrived at 7:02. He was 51, 6 feet 1 inch, gray-blonde crew cut, brown mustache, tan uniform with green accents, black boots. He had worked Ford County since 1998. He walked the shed with a mag light, photographed the cut padlock, photographed the tire tracks in the frost outside the shed door, photographed the oil stains on the concrete floor. This was professional, Garver said. He measured the tire track spacing with a folding ruler. Flatbed with a payload rating of 10,000 pounds or more. Wheelbase suggests an F450 or an F550. They had a keyless electric start kit or a jumper harness. Whatever the 4440 needed, they brought the tool for it. In and out in under 30 minutes. No neighbors heard anything. Any chance of prints? Earl asked. I'll send the padlock to the lab, Garver said. But they'll have worn gloves. This crew knew what it was doing. Virgil Kemp arrived at 7:40 in his F250. He was 71 years old, lean, silver flat top, oil-stained hands. He had worked on Walter's 4440 since 1981. He walked into the shed, looked at the empty concrete floor, and sat down slow on the workbench. Serial number? Virgil asked. I have it in the file, Earl said. Hour meter? Last I checked, 9,417. Walter's hands have been on every bolt of that tractor, Virgil said. I know, Earl said. Ruth called Deere Insurance Agency at 8:15 a.m. Shirley Mae Greer was 58, 5 feet 5 inches, dyed honey blonde bob, reading glasses on a pearl chain, pearl earrings, dressed in a navy pantsuit. She had inherited the agency from her father in 1997. She pulled the Braddock policy up on her monitor within 2 minutes. "Scheduled value $48,000, Shirley said. "Comprehensive covers theft. You'll need the sheriff's case number and a detailed equipment list." "How long was the canvas cover on it?" 7 years, Ruth said. "Then I'll need photographs of the restoration documentation. Virgil's records, receipts, anything you've got." "You'll get them," Ruth said. Dale Voss drove up in his white GMC Yukon at 11:40 that morning. He was 61, 5 feet 8 inches, ruddy face, wire-rimmed glasses, clean polo, khakis. He sat on the county board. He farmed 400 acres and hired most of the labor out. He talked more than he worked. He leaned on his open driver's door. "Earl," he said, "heard about the tractor?" "Dale, that was Walter's old 4440, wasn't it? The 78? "It was." Dale shook his head and grinned like a man who had been waiting for someone else's misfortune. "Tough one," he said. "I hate to say it, but you're not getting that tractor back. Those old greens go straight to a chop shop. Blocks in a Mexican truck to Monterrey by Friday. They strip the hood and the hydraulics and the rear end, sell the parts on eBay under different names. You'll see your fender panel on Facebook Marketplace in 3 weeks. Mark my words." "Maybe," Earl said. "Well, the insurance'll pay out. $40,000 or so, I'd guess. Take it and buy a new R-Series. You've got an 8R already. Trade up to a 9R. That 4440 was a memory piece anyway." "Thanks for coming by, Dale," Earl said. Dale nodded, climbed back in his Yukon, and drove off still grinning. Ruth watched him go from the kitchen window. She did not say what she was thinking. Ruth poured Earl a second cup of coffee after Dale was gone. "He's going to say it at every Farm Bureau meeting until the payout comes in," she said. "He is," Earl said. "You can tell him anything you want." "I know what I'll tell him," Earl said. "I'll tell him the case is still open." Ruth nodded. She wrote the date of the theft at the top of a fresh page in her ledger, October 12th, 2021. And under it she wrote, "Insurance claim filed October 13th, 2021." And under that an empty line where the payout would someday go. She left that line empty through November. She left it empty through December. 3 days later, Illinois State Police investigator Cliff Varner came out to the farm. He was 47, 5 feet 9 inches, short dark hair, dark frame glasses, civilian navy polo, and gray slacks. He worked the state's Agricultural Equipment Theft Task Force, had since 2015. He drove a gray 2019 Ford Explorer unmarked. "Mr. Braddock," he said, "your 4440 is the 14th vintage John Deere reported stolen in eastern Illinois in the last 8 weeks. Ford, Iroquois, Champaign, Vermilion counties, all pre-2000, all between 3,000 and 11,000 hours. All stored in outbuildings, all taken at night." "Same crew?" Earl asked. "Almost certainly. Flatbed, professional extraction, 0 witnesses. We think they're moving them through Missouri into an Ozark repackaging operation. Serial numbers get ground off or altered. Tractors resurface on regional auctions in Arkansas, Oklahoma, North Texas, sometimes as far south as Monterrey." "Dale Voss said Monterrey." "Dale Voss is right about the destination," Varner said. "He's wrong if he thinks it's guaranteed. We've recovered 6 vintage Deeres in the last 2 years from that same pipeline. Sometimes they get stopped at a weigh station. Sometimes a trucker sees something. Sometimes they show up on a forum. 6 out of how many? Earl asked. 6 out of 31 stolen in the region, Varner said. 19% recovery rate. Not great, Earl said. Not great, Varner said, but not zero. What are they worth to the buyers? Earl asked. Your 4440 retails between $42,000 and $55,000 depending on condition, Varner said. Stripped for parts, about $18,000, whole and running, delivered to Arkansas, around $38,000 cash to the buyer. That's why they take them whole. The volume pricing works against part sales. So there's still a chance she's whole, Earl said. There's a chance, Varner said. Ruth drove into Gibson City the following week and sat across from Shirley May Greer with the claim file. Shirley had Earl's photographs, the sheriff's case number, Virgil's 2014 restoration receipts totaling $8,400, and a copy of the Greer scheduled value endorsement at $48,000. I've got everything I need, Shirley told Ruth. The company will hold this open 180 days while the police work the case. If there's no recovery by April 10th, we pay out the $48,000 minus the $500 deductible. $47,500, Ruth said. $47,500, Shirley said. I'm sorry about the tractor, Ruth. So am I, Ruth said. November passed. December passed. Earl planted his fall cover crop, ran the S680 through the last of the soybean harvest, and attended the Ford County Farm Bureau meeting on the first Tuesday of each month. At every meeting, Dale Voss found a way to bring up the missing 4440. Still no sign of Walter's old tractor, Earl? Insurance come through yet? $48,000, wasn't it? Earl said each time that the insurance had not paid out because the case was still open. He did not say more than that. Nathan spent most of his evenings on a laptop at the kitchen table. He found, through a Deere collectors forum in mid-November, a retired John Deere dealer named Lyle Kessinger, 73 years old, bald gray horseshoe hair, out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Kessinger ran a private Facebook group called Missing Green Iron. 6,400 members, mostly truckers, mechanics, and farmers across the Midwest. Kessinger posted photos of stolen Deeres with their serial numbers, insurance tags, and distinguishing marks. Nathan sent Kessinger a message with 3 photographs of Walter's 4440 and the serial number off the Greer insurance policy. Kessinger posted it to the group that same night, November 14th, 2021. Faded green paint, cracked steering wheel hub, a hand-applied flat black touch-up on the right rear fender where Walter had patched a scrape from the 1994 corn stubble. 6-digit hour meter at 9,417. The Post got 412 shares in the first 48 hours. Then it went quiet. Through all of December, nothing came back. On the night of January 8th, 2022, Clay Hornsby pulled his silver 2019 Peterbilt 579-day cab into the Flying J truck stop on Interstate 55 outside Sikeston, Missouri. He was 44, 5 feet 10 inches, 210 pounds, weather-worn face, ruddy cheeks, short sandy brown hair under a red case YH cap, brown mustache, blue Dickies long-sleeve work shirt, jeans, Carhartt insulated jacket. He hauled flatbed loads through 48 states, and he had grown up on his family's farm in northwest Missouri, running a John Deere 4020 through his high school summers. He parked at Pump 14, fueled up on $618 worth of diesel at $5.04 a gallon, and walked across the lot to the diner for a 10 p.m. dinner. In the back lot of the truck stop sat a tan Ford F550 flatbed with a faded green John Deere tractor strapped down under a blue tarp. The front two tires showed a hexagonal rubberware pattern. The exhaust stack was wrapped in a piece of cardboard. The headlight on the driver's side was smashed. Clay ordered coffee and a $14 cheeseburger. Two men at the counter, both mid-30s, one in a black Carhartt hoodie, one in a gray ball cap with a ripped brim, were talking quietly about a run to Jackson by Tuesday and $3,400 for the one with the narrow front. Clay paid his check at 10:47, walked back to his truck, and stopped in the dark of the lot behind the flatbed. He lifted the corner of the tarp with his bare hand. The paint under the tarp was faded John Deere green. The rear fender had a hand-applied flat black touch-up in a shape he could not unsee. He had read the missing green iron post 2 weeks earlier. Clay walked back to his Peterbilt, climbed into the sleeper, pulled out his phone, and called the number listed in the post. It was 10:53 p.m. in Sikeston, Missouri, and 10:53 p.m. in Gibson City, Illinois. Earl picked up on the second ring. "Mr. Braddock, my name is Clay Hornsby. I'm a flatbed trucker out of Pattonsburg, Missouri. I'm looking at what I think is your 1978 John Deere 444 in a truck stop lot in Sikeston. Flat black patch on the right rear fender. Our meter reads low 9,000s, best I can tell. Do you want me to stay on it?" Earl sat up straight at the kitchen table. Ruth was across from him. "Yes," Earl said. "Stay on it. Don't approach. Let me call the sheriff. What's your phone number, Mr. Hornsby?" Clay gave him the number. "I'll be here till 4 a.m. at least. Cab's warm. I can see the flatbed from my bunk window." Earl called Deputy Tom Garver at 10:57. Garver called Investigator Cliff Varner at 11:04. Varner called the Missouri State Highway Patrol's Agricultural Theft Liaison at 11:15. By midnight, a state trooper had the Flying J under surveillance from a dark section of the lot 200 yards off. Earl, Nathan, and Virgil loaded into Earl's 2017 Chevy Silverado 2,500 at 11:20 p.m. and drove south on Interstate 57. It was 412 miles from Gibson City to Sikeston. Nathan drove. Earl stared out the windshield for most of the trip. Virgil slept in the back seat for 2 hours and then woke up and said, without looking at anyone, Walter would have driven down too. Around 1 a.m., the three of them passed through Effingham. Virgil stayed awake after that. "I keep thinking about the 1994 stubble patch," Virgil said. "The flat black on the fender?" Nathan asked. "That," Virgil said. "Walter did that patch with a rattle can from the Paxton Co-op in October of 1994. I told him a dozen times I'd repaint the whole fender, and he said, 'Leave it.' Said it was proof the tractor had worked." "That's what the trucker saw," Nathan said. "That's what he saw," Virgil said. At 3:48 a.m., the two men in the diner came back out to the flatbed with 2 large to-go coffees. They unstrapped the tarp, checked the straps on the tractor, and started the F550. They pulled out of the Flying J onto the southbound ramp of Interstate 55. The state trooper followed at a 3-car distance. At 4:22 a.m. at the way station just past mile marker 46 in Scott County, Missouri, 3 troopers waved the F550 into the inspection lane. The driver's license came back expired. The vehicle registration came back to a shell company with no matching address. The tractor serial number, read by flashlight off the plate on the engine block, was the serial number off the Greer insurance policy for the stolen 1978 4440, owned by Earl Braddock of Ford County, Illinois. Earl and Nathan and Virgil pulled into the way station parking area at 5:37 a.m. The sky was still fully dark. Troopers had the 2 men handcuffed on the gravel. The flatbed sat under the sodium lights with the blue tarp lifted off the 4440. Walter's tractor looked tired and sat at a slight angle on the loose straps. Earl walked around the flatbed once. He did not climb up on it. He read the serial number off the plate himself. "That's her," Earl told the state trooper. "Yes, sir," the trooper said. "Our meter reads 9,441. Same make, year, serial." 24 hours on her since they took her, Earl said. "Sounds about right. Best we can tell, the crew drove her 600 miles on roads between the Illinois pickup and the Missouri drop. One of them has a chop shop buyer lined up in Jackson, Mississippi for $34,000 cash. They would have been there by Wednesday." Virgil climbed up onto the flatbed, walked around the tractor, and came back down. "Fuel lines cut, front headlights broken, scratched paint on the hood and the right front fender. But the block is clean. Transmission housing's intact. They didn't hurt her to move her." "What about the hour meter?" Earl asked. "Ran her 24 hours. Wear is minimal. She'll be fine." Investigator Cliff Varner arrived at 7:15 a.m. He had driven through the night separately. He brought a Missouri state paperwork packet and a written chain of custody form. "Mr. Braddock," Varner said, "these 2 are part of the crew we've been after since June. Tractor goes to evidence first. We'll release her to you within 14 days, assuming nothing else shows." 14 days, Earl said. 14 days. Earl nodded. He signed the chain of custody form. Nathan photographed the tractor from 4 angles for the insurance claim. Virgil rode back to Gibson City with the Scott County deputy who agreed to run him up to the state line. Earl and Nathan drove home in the Silverado. They were back on the Braddock farm at 3:40 p.m. 1,074 miles round trip on the odometer, $216 worth of fuel spent. Ruth met them at the kitchen door. "She's coming home." 14 days, Earl said. "Clay Hornsby." "Clay Hornsby? Did you thank him?" "I will." The tractor came home on a state-contracted flatbed on January 26, 2022. Virgil spent the next 6 weeks rebuilding what was damaged. A new fuel line and filter at $88, a new sealed beam headlamp at $42, and a 2-stage repaint on the hood and right fender at Pratt Auto Body in Paxton for $1,180. Insurance covered $1,310 of the repair. The $48,000 claim was closed as a recovery instead of a payout. Clay Hornsby came through central Illinois on a load headed for Peoria on the first weekend of March. He stopped at the Braddock farm on a Saturday afternoon. He was exactly as Earl had pictured him. The red case, IH cap, the weathered face, the Carhartt jacket. Earl met him in the drive and shook his hand. Ruth cooked a pot roast. Clay ate 2 plates and drank 3 cups of coffee at the kitchen table. Nathan sat across from him and asked about the Peterbilt. Virgil asked about the 402 Clay had driven as a kid. "How long were you in the diner that night, Mr. Hornsby?" Ruth asked. "About 40 minutes, Clay said. "You heard what they were saying?" Nathan asked. "A little," Clay said. "Enough to know they weren't farmers. Farmers don't talk about tractors like livestock to a buyer. They talk about them like family." "No, they don't," Virgil said. "I grew up in Pattonsburg," Clay said. "My dad ran a 68 4020 until 1998, then a 79 4440. Same tractor I learned on as the one in your shed, Mr. Braddock." "Earl," Earl said. "Earl," Clay said. At the end of the meal, Earl took a white envelope out of his shirt pocket and set it on the table between them. $2,000, he said. "A reward's the least we can do." Clay looked at the envelope for a moment. He pushed it back across the table. "I'd have done it for any man," Clay said. "I grew up on a Deere. Didn't feel right, seeing that one sit there." Clay: "Keep it, mister." "Braddock!" Earl kept it. He put the envelope in the top drawer of the hutch next to the original pink slip from 1978. Clay left at 5:45. He waved from the cab of his Peterbilt as he pulled out of the drive. Dale Voss drove past the Braddock place 3 times over the next 2 weeks. He slowed each time, but did not stop. He did not call Earl. He did not mention the 4440 at the April Farm Bureau meeting. In May, when another county board member asked him in passing about the Braddock recovery, Dale muttered that the recovery rate on stolen deers was lucky, mostly. Virgil finished the repaint on March 16, 2022. The 4440 rolled out of Pratt Auto Body in Paxton looking, Virgil said, better than it had in 5 years. Earl paid Pratt's bill in full, thanked Howard Pratt for the rush work, and drove the 4440 home on a flatbed trailer hitched to his Silverado. Nathan asked Earl, the night the tractor came home for good, whether they ought to build a locked steel cage around her in the shed. "No," Earl said. "Dad, they could come back." "They could," Earl said. "She's a tractor, Nathan. She belongs in the shed." Earl did buy a new hardened steel shackle padlock for the shed door, Abloy Protect 2, $189, and a motion-activated LED floodlight for the eave at $205. Virgil wired it to an $88 battery backup for when the power went out. A Gibson City locksmith rekeyed the service door deadbolt for $65. The total security upgrade came to $547. Ruth logged every line in her ledger under maintenance. On a Saturday in late March, 2022, Earl pulled the canvas cover back over the 4440 and weighted the front corners the way Walter had taught him 30 years earlier. He walked out of the shed, clicked the new $189 padlock closed, and tested the motion light. The LED caught him and held for 8 seconds before it faded. Lyle Kessinger posted on Missing Green Iron the following Monday. Recovered, Gibson City, Illinois, 1978. John Deere 4440. Home safe thanks to a trucker out of Pattonsburg, Missouri. The post got 2,340 likes in 72 hours. Clay Hornsby received 138 private messages in 1 week from strangers telling him he had done a fine thing. He did not reply to any of them. Investigator Cliff Varner closed out the case file on Varner's desk on April 9, 2022. 4 men were eventually indicted in the theft ring. The 2 at the Missouri Way Station pled out on reduced charges in exchange for testifying. A 5th man, the ringleader working out of an Ozark warehouse, fled the country. Of the 14 tractors stolen in eastern Illinois between August and October of 2021, 4 were recovered. Walter's 4440 was the second. Earl Braddock ran the 4440 on the East 80 that fall for grain cart work. She ran clean through 46 hours of harvest prep without missing a cylinder. Walter's original crankshaft was still true. The 4440 sits in the Braddock machine shed in Gibson City, Illinois, under a tan canvas cover. The hour meter reads 9,487. The original pink slip from October 1978 is in the manila envelope in the top drawer of the hutch, beside an unopened white envelope containing $2,000 cash. The new padlock on the shed door is rated for 12,000 pounds of pull. Earl has not had to use it for anything but closing the shed behind him since the day Clay Hornsby called.